you ever wondered why some people turn $100,000 into $17 million, while others with the exact same money end up with less than they started? Why is your safe savings account earning 1% actually the riskiest place to keep your money? What if I told you that 5 boring index funds, not crypto, not individual stocks, not real estate, have quietly created more millionaires than any other investment strategy in history? Here's what's going to shock you. While you've been keeping your money safe, earning practically nothing, these 5 specific Fidelity funds have been compounding wealth at rates between 6% and 18% annually for decades. Warren Buffett himself wants 90% of his wife's inheritance in these exact types of investments. Most Americans retire with $65,000 saved, barely enough for 5 years of living expenses. Meanwhile, people using what I'm about to show you are building generational wealth using the same opportunities available to you right now. Today I'm revealing the exact 5 funds that could turn your $100 into millions, the mathematical proof behind each one, and the shocking allocation strategy that most financial advisors will never tell you about. Compound wealth. If you're ready to stop watching your money lose value while others get rich using these hidden strategies. But first, let me show you the most explosive fund that could change your life forever. Fund number 1, the $17 million Money Machine Technology ETF. Let me tell you about the biggest financial regret of my friend's father, because it perfectly illustrates why most people miss the greatest wealth-building opportunities of their lifetime. Back in 1997, my friend's dad, Robert, had exactly $100,000 to invest. His financial advisor told him technology stocks were too risky and convinced him to put everything in safe, government bonds and blue-chip dividend stocks. Meanwhile, his neighbor Jim took a different approach and put his $100,000 into technology companies like Microsoft, Intel, and early internet pioneers. Robert felt smart and responsible following conventional wisdom. Jim looked reckless, betting on unproven tech companies. Fast forward 25 years, Robert's conservative portfolio grew to about $400,000. Jim's technology investments? Over $3.2 million, and that's being conservative with the math. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that captures this perfectly. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Robert planted his money in the wrong soil. Jim planted his in the technology revolution that was reshaping the entire world. Here's where FTech becomes your time machine back to those opportunities. This fund gives you instant ownership in the companies literally building the future. NVIDIA makes the chips powering artificial intelligence. Microsoft dominates cloud computing. Apple revolutionized how we communicate and work. These aren't speculative startups. They're the dominant forces shaping every aspect of modern life. The numbers are absolutely staggering. FTech has delivered 18.67% annual returns historically. That's nearly double what the overall stock market returns. If you invested $100,000 in FTech today and it continued performing at historical averages, after 10 years, you'd have $559,000. After 20 years, $3.1 million. After 30 years, an incredible $17.4 million. But here's what really gets exciting. By year 30, you'd be earning over $115,000 annually just in dividends. That's more than most people's entire salary, generated passively by owning shares in companies that solve problems and create value every single day. Warren Buffett, who famously avoided technology for decades, later admitted his biggest mistake was not buying Amazon and Google early. He said, "I was too dumb to realize what was going to happen." Don't make Robert's mistake. Don't make Buffett's early mistake. Jeff Bezos built Amazon knowing that betting against American innovation is always a losing strategy. When you buy FTech, you're not gambling on the future. You're investing in companies that are already creating that future and generating massive profits doing it. Your action step: start with $20,000 in FTech as your portfolio's growth engine. This isn't speculation. It's participation in the greatest wealth creation story in human history. Stop thinking of technology as risky. The riskiest move is missing the technological transformation happening right in front of you. But putting everything in tech would be foolish. Smart money uses this next fund to capture the entire innovation economy while spreading risk. Fund number 2, the Innovation Wealth Builder, NASDAQ ETF. I have to tell you about my Uncle Tony's story, because it shows exactly why smart people miss out on the greatest wealth creation opportunities by trying to pick individual winners instead of owning the entire innovation ecosystem. Tony was a brilliant engineer who saw the internet revolution coming in the late 1990s. He had $100,000 to invest and knew technology was the future. But instead of buying broadly, Tony tried to pick the next Microsoft. He researched for months, analyzed dozens of companies, and put all his money into what he thought were the best individual tech stocks: WorldCom, Pets.com, and eToys. Tony felt like a genius for the first 2 years as his picks soared. Then the dot-com crash hit in 2000, and every single one of his sure-thing companies either went bankrupt or lost 95% of their value. Tony's $100,000 became $8,000. He was so devastated that he never invested in technology again. Here's the tragic irony. If Tony had simply bought the entire NASDAQ index instead of trying to pick winners, he would have survived the crash and become incredibly wealthy. The NASDAQ recovered and went on to create more millionaires than any other investment in history. John D. Rockefeller understood this principle 150 years ago when he said, "I would rather own a small piece of many oil wells than own one oil well completely." Rockefeller knew that diversification across an entire booming industry was safer and more profitable than betting everything on individual companies. 1Q gives you Rockefeller's strategy applied to the modern innovation economy. Instead of trying to pick the next Apple or Amazon, you own pieces of over 3,000 companies listed on the NASDAQ. You get the biggest winners like Nvidia, Microsoft, and Apple, but you also get exposure to every other company driving innovation in America. The math is beautiful. 1Q has delivered 14.4% annual returns on average, with some periods like 2010-2020 returning 17.5% annually. If you invest $100,000 in 1Q, after 30 years, you could have $5.4 million. That's the power of owning the entire innovation economy instead of gambling on individual stocks. Charlie Munger captured this wisdom perfectly. I'd rather own a wonderful business than try to find a perfect business. 1Q doesn't require you to find the perfect company. It gives you ownership in all the wonderful businesses that are transforming how we live, work, and communicate. Here's what makes 1Q brilliant. It's weighted toward the companies that are actually succeeding. The top 10 holdings make up about 40% of the fund, so you get concentrated exposure to the biggest winners while still having diversification protection if any individual company fails. Your action step: use 1Q as your core innovation holding. This isn't speculation. It's systematic participation in American business innovation. You're not buying stocks. You're buying pieces of the future economy. And unlike my Uncle Tony, you don't have to guess which companies will win. You own them all. But innovation alone isn't enough. When the economy booms and people start spending money, this next sector absolutely explodes. Fund number 3, the Economic Boom Multiplier, Consumer Discretionary. I need to tell you about 2 friends who made completely opposite investment decisions in 2010, because their story perfectly shows why understanding consumer psychology is the key to explosive wealth creation. Meet Sarah and Mike, both teachers earning $50,000 annually with $100,000 each to invest after inheriting money from their grandparents. In 2010, coming out of the Great Recession, Sarah looked around and saw people slowly getting their confidence back. Restaurants were getting busier, people were shopping again, her neighbors were finally buying new cars and renovating their homes. Sarah's insight was brilliant. When people feel good about money, they spend it on things they want, not just things they need. She put her $100,000 into companies like Amazon, which was still just an online bookstore to most people, Tesla, when everyone thought electric cars would never work, and Home Depot, betting that people would start home improvement projects again. Mike, on the other hand, was terrified by the recent financial crisis. He put his money into safe utility companies and government bonds, thinking Sarah was crazy for investing in luxury businesses during uncertain times. People will always need electricity and water, Mike reasoned, but they don't need fancy cars and online shopping. There's an ancient Roman saying, Fortuna audaces juvat, fortune favors the bold. Sarah understood something Mike missed. When economic confidence returns, people don't just buy necessities, they explode into spending on experiences, upgrades, and dreams they've been delaying. Fast forward to today, Sarah's risky, consumer discretionary investments have grown to over $850,000. Mike's safe utilities and bonds? About $180,000. Sarah didn't just beat Mike, she destroyed him financially by understanding human nature and economic cycles. FDIS captures exactly what Sarah understood intuitively. This fund owns the companies that absolutely explode when the economy is good and people have discretionary income to spend. Amazon doesn't just sell books anymore. It's the everything store that people splurge with when they feel wealthy. Tesla went from zero to the most valuable car company in the world. Home Depot benefits every time someone decides to renovate instead of just maintain. The numbers prove Sarah's strategy. FDIS delivered 16% annual returns from 2010 to 2020, crushing the overall market's 13.3%. If you invest $100,000 in FDIS and it continues its historical performance, after 30 years, you could have $3.1 million. Benjamin Franklin understood this principle 250 years ago. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Sarah's knowledge of consumer psychology paid enormous interest. FDIS gives you that same knowledge systematically applied to an entire sector. These aren't small startups hoping to make it big. Amazon controls 40% of US e-commerce. Tesla revolutionized the auto industry. Home Depot dominates home improvement. You're buying proven winners that benefit from one simple truth. When people feel good about money, they spend it on improving their lives. Your action step: use FDIS as your economic boom multiplier, especially if you're younger and can handle the volatility that comes with explosive growth potential. But economic cycles create ups and downs. This next sector provides steady wealth building regardless of what's happening in the economy. Fund number 4. The Recession-Proof Wealth Protector, Healthcare ETF. Let me tell you about two investors who taught me the most important lesson about protecting wealth during economic disasters. A lesson that could save you from losing everything when the next crisis hits. In 2007, my friend's dad David and his brother Paul each had $200,000 invested in the stock market. David was a retired doctor who understood something most investors miss. People get sick regardless of what's happening with the economy or the stock market. His portfolio was heavily weighted in healthcare companies: Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, United Health Group, and Pfizer. Paul, a successful real estate agent, thought David was playing it too safe. Paul's portfolio was loaded with financial stocks, tech companies, and real estate investments. Why invest in boring healthcare when tech and finance are making people rich? Paul would argue during family dinners. Then 2008 hit like a freight train. The financial crisis destroyed everything Paul believed about investing. His bank stocks got crushed, his tech investments collapsed, his real estate holdings became worthless overnight. Paul's $200,000 became $85,000 in less than a year. He was devastated, angry, and broke. David, his healthcare portfolio fell only 22%, while the overall market crashed 38%. By 2010, while Paul was still recovering from his losses, David's healthcare investments had not only recovered but reached new highs. David's boring healthcare strategy had protected his wealth when everything else was falling apart. There's an ancient proverb that says, "Health is the greatest wealth." But David understood the investment version. Healthcare is the most stable wealth. People don't stop getting sick during recessions. They don't cancel cancer treatments because the stock market crashed. They don't postpone heart surgery because unemployment is high. FHLC captures this defensive power systematically. The fund owns companies like Eli Lilly, which makes diabetes and cancer medications that people need regardless of economic conditions. United Health Group provides insurance that's essential in both good times and bad. Johnson & Johnson makes everything from Band-Aids to life-saving pharmaceuticals. The numbers prove David's strategy works. FHLC has delivered 9.2% annual returns over time with remarkably low volatility. The dividend yield of 1.26% might seem modest, but those dividends have grown at 17% annually over the past decade. If you invest $100,000 in FHLC, after 30 years, you could have $1.4 million with annual dividends of over $18,200. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." But when it comes to healthcare investing, you can be confident about the future because human nature doesn't change. People will always get sick, age, and need medical care. Ray Dalio, who built the world's largest hedge fund, learned this lesson the hard way. The biggest mistake investors make is believing that what happened in the recent past is likely to persist. Healthcare doesn't make this mistake. It's consistent through every economic cycle. Your action step: use FHLC as your portfolio's anchor during market volatility. This isn't just about steady returns. It's about sleeping well at night, knowing part of your wealth is protected by businesses that people need, regardless of what's happening in the world. But even healthcare has some volatility. This final fund provides the most unshakable foundation any portfolio can have. Fund number 5, the Unshakeable Foundation, Consumer Staples. I have to tell you about the conversation that completely changed how I think about building unshakable wealth. A conversation between my grandmother and my uncle during the 2008 financial crisis that revealed the most important investment wisdom I've ever heard. My Uncle Frank was panicking in late 2008. His retirement portfolio had lost 40% of its value, his tech stocks were getting crushed, and he was considering selling everything and hiding his money under a mattress. "The whole system is collapsing," he told my grandmother. "Nothing is safe anymore." My grandmother, who had lived through the Great Depression, calmly looked at him and said something profound. "Frank, during the worst times in my life, the Depression, World War II, every recession since, people still needed to brush their teeth, wash their clothes, feed their families, and clean their homes. The companies that made those everyday products never stopped making money." She was talking about companies like Procter & Gamble, which had been paying dividends for over 130 years. Walmart, which people needed more during tough times, not less. Coca-Cola, which Warren Buffett calls his favorite investment because people will drink Coke in good times and bad times. Costco, where families go to stretch their dollars during financial stress. My grandmother understood something that Wall Street often forgets. There's a hierarchy of human needs, and the companies serving the most basic needs are the most reliable investments. Ancient philosophers called this first things first. In Maslow's hierarchy, food, shelter, and basic necessities come before everything else. FSTA captures this timeless wisdom systematically. During the 2008 crisis, while the overall market crashed 38%, consumer staples fell only 15%. Why? Because people don't stop buying toilet paper, soap, food, and household essentials during recessions. If anything, they shop more carefully and gravitate toward value retailers like Walmart and Costco. The numbers prove my grandmother's wisdom. FSTA delivers 6.4% annual returns with a 2.4% dividend yield that grows at 10% annually. These aren't explosive returns, but they're rock-solid reliable. If you invest $100,000 in FSTA, after 30 years you could have $654,000 plus $15,700 in annual dividends. Warren Buffett, who owns massive positions in consumer staples, explains it perfectly. Our favorite holding period is forever. These are businesses so fundamental to human life that they can compound wealth for decades without drama or volatility that keeps you awake at night. There's an ancient Roman saying, pecunia non olet. Money has no smell. But consumer staples, money smells like security, reliability, and peace of mind. These are companies that have survived every war, depression, recession, and crisis for over a century by serving humanity's most basic needs. Your action step: use FSTA as your portfolio's unshakable foundation, especially if you're older or approaching retirement and need income stability more than explosive growth. This isn't about getting rich quickly, it's about staying rich forever by owning businesses that people need, regardless of what's happening in the world. Now that you understand all 5 funds, let me show you how to combine them into the ultimate wealth-building machine that works while you sleep. There you have it. The 5 Fidelity funds that have quietly created more millionaires than any other investment strategy. F-Tech for explosive technology growth that could turn $100K into $17.4 million. 1Q for broad innovation exposure across 3,000 plus companies. FDIS for capturing economic boom cycles. FHLC for recession-proof healthcare stability. And FSTA for Unshakeable Consumer Staples Foundation. The math that changes everything. 100K properly allocated across these 5 funds, earning their historical returns, could become millions in 30 years through the power of compound growth and American business innovation. Warren Buffett wants 90% of his wife's inheritance in these exact types of investments for a reason. Your action plan starts today. Open a Fidelity account this week. It's free and takes 10 minutes online. Transfer your money from savings accounts earning nothing and put it to work in businesses that have been creating wealth for generations. Comment Millionaire Mindset if you're ready to stop letting inflation steal your wealth and start building generational money through proven strategies. Share this with someone who's keeping money in savings accounts, losing value every day. Should I break down the exact allocation strategy for different ages? How much to put in each fund based on your risk tolerance and timeline? You have 100K and access to the same wealth-building tools that created countless millionaires. Time is your biggest advantage, but only if you start now. Every day you wait is compound growth you'll never get back.